In the land where I was born, there are now women seeking justice. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Thank you for tuning into Justice for Birth Mothers. My name is Anna Kavanagh, co-founder and convener to the Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice, Ireland's largest non-Tusla funded group advocating on behalf of birth mothers in difficulty with Tusla, the Gardai and the family court. The mothers that we support are bound by the in-camera rule, which means they could be jailed for speaking outside the family court about what's happening to them. To overcome the silencing of these birth mothers and give them a voice, I interviewed 20 of them that I've personally come to know since our group was formed in 2019. They volunteered to describe their experiences in great detail to let the world know about the ongoing state abuse of mothers and children in Ireland. The voices you're about to hear are the voices of the women who offered to read the transcripts of what was said to me. I want to warn you in advance that you will probably be disturbed by what you're about to hear. This podcast examines the in-camera rule. Lead researcher with the Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice, Michelle Monaghan, explains now how the in-camera rule impacts birth mothers in the family court.
In-camera is a Latin term which means in chambers. Where a case effectively remains in chambers, it's private and not open to the public. Family law cases are heard in private or in camera, supposedly to protect the privacy of the family. Only officers of the court, the parties to the case and their legal representatives, witnesses and other people allowed by the judge are allowed in the courtroom while the case is being heard. Witnesses will enter the courtroom to be cross-examined and will leave the courtroom after their cross-examination as they are not permitted to attend all of the in-camera proceedings. Section 40 of the Civil Liability and Courts Act 2004 allows solicitors, barristers and certain other categories of people approved by the Minister for Justice and Equality to attend family law cases and publish reports. Up until the introduction of the Courts and Civil Law Act 2013, which became operative in January 2014, members of the public and media were excluded from the hearings of family law and childcare cases which are heard otherwise than in public or in camera.
Lucy developed a dependency on alcohol following the accidental death of her son. She went to Tusla looking for help, and when she got her life back in order, her daughter returned home to her. Sometime later, Lucy had a slip and again she went to Tusla seeking help. But this time she faced a 3.5-year battle to have her daughter returned home to her.
So basically, the in-camera rule is just a way of protecting the social workers and their lives. It was a joke. It doesn't protect the children, that's for sure. I came out of the court one day and I had a folder, and in the folder was my notes. From just notes I had, it was a closed black folder. I went to have some food and I was in a taxi on the way back. I left the folder in the back of the taxi, right? He handed it into the Tusla office. They went through it with a fine tooth comb. What they saw, they recognised it. And with my social worker got it. She reported me to the court for breaking the in-camera rule to try and weaken my case. So I rang the guards and they said I didn't break the in-camera rule because to break the in-camera rule you have to have intent. The bottom line is that Tusla has to be able to prove that you had intent to break the in-camera rule.
Give the mothers back their children. Give the children back to the mother. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Jane is a grandmother and a retired professional lady. Her daughter has special needs, but was living independently and was holding down a job. Her daughter fell pregnant by a man from outside the EU that she had met online. Her daughter's child was taken by Tusla and custody was given to the father. Up to the point when he got custody, he had very little contact with the child. Jane has been assisting her daughter in trying to get reunification with her child, but recently the family are very alarmed that the family court has allowed this man to take the child out of the country to a country that is not signed up to the Hague Convention. And if he fails to return the child to Ireland, there's very little that they can do about it. Her daughter has very limited access to her child, and it's totally at the discretion of the child's father.
The in-camera rule is a constant threat. You live in fear that you will see or do something that will break it. It's complicated for me because it's my daughter's case and I'm not allowed to be her advocate. You're afraid that if you open your mouth, you will be charged thousands of euros or put in prison. Even though I am her mother, I am not supposed to know about anything that's going on in the court. It's an horrendous rule, really. And then again, it covers up all the stuff that is going on. The secrecy of it all gets to me. Obviously, her solicitor won't speak to me. Even though she is vulnerable, she is basically left on her own because of the in-camera rule. She doesn't fully understand what is going on in court. It's horrendous, really. I'm not too sure that she is fully aware of the seriousness of the in-camera rule. I am more aware of it than she is, to be honest. She doesn't really worry about it. She is more concerned about her son and about how he is getting on. Because I am her mother, I can see how the in-camera rule really works against somebody like my daughter, who has difficulties in understanding difficult legal matters, and this leaves her even more vulnerable to exploitation in the court. For myself, I always have to be really careful when I'm talking to people. I feel I have to be very secretive about everything. I just cannot be myself.
Look into your mother's face. No one else can take her place. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Previously, it was thought that the right of the family to privacy, as protected in the Constitution of Ireland, could only be protected by the absolute prohibition on members of the press from attending such hearings. However, the public also has a constitutionally protected right to see justice being administered in public, and this right is essential to the effective operation of a democratic state. Until January 2014, the balance between protecting the family's right to privacy and the public's right to see justice being administered in public was thought only to have been achieved by the blanket prohibition on members of the press from attending family law and childcare hearings. The 2013 Act now allows bona fide representatives of the press attend family law cases, subject to the right of the judge to exclude any such representatives and to publish reports. The publication of reports of family law cases is allowed under the Act on the strict condition that no names, addresses, or any other details which might identify the parties can be used. Members of the press are restricted from publishing any material which would be likely to lead members of the public to identify the parties in a case. A breach of this provision is a criminal offence, and on conviction on indictment in the Circuit Court or High Court, it can result in a fine of up to €50,000 or a term of imprisonment of up to 12 months or both. The severity of these sanctions is a strong incentive for the media to protect anonymity. A member of the press can unilaterally decide to publish material which it considers to fall outside of the above restriction, unless it is prohibited by a court order.
Holly is a victim of domestic violence and coercive control. After the relationship with her children's father broke down, he continually made false allegations against her to the Gardai and to Tusla, and this resulted in her children being removed from her.
All I know is that it's not providing the protection that it was meant to. There's no accountability. It's hindering accountability for judges, solicitors and Tusla from being held accountable when they lie on the stand, or judges when they overstep their bounds. The court assessor has written a report for the court that says my ex lies and constantly makes allegations that are baseless against me. Because of the in-camera rule, I'm not allowed to refer to this report when I'm making a report to the Gardaí about his ongoing coercive control. I don't have any expectations that I'll be able to have that report used to protect myself or the kids, for that matter, from this man. I just know that the in-camera rule needs to just go away. It needs to be reworked. If a crime is disclosed in the family court, then it should be prosecuted. It should be no different than the criminal court.
Motherhood is hard, support the mother and the child together. Do not tear this love asunder. Support, respect the mother. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Just to pick up on a point made there by Holly, it is our understanding that if there is a disclosure in relation to a crime made in the family court, it is at the discretion of the judge whether or not he will allow the in-camera rule to be broken in order for it to be reported to the Gardaí. Next up, Roseanne. Tusla used Roseanne's partner's mental health difficulties as the reason for removing her children and taking them into state care. Roseanne has waged a battle for approximately a decade to get her children returned home to her. Tusla now admit that she is a loving, caring, kind, competent mother, but they are saying that it would be too unsettling for the children to remove them from their placements and send them home to her.
I feel the rule is not to protect the identity of the children, as everyone in my neighbourhood knew my kids were taken. It's a very strange process, and they say it's to protect the kids. It's not. I think it used to protect the wrongdoing that they do, the perjury that they commit in court, which they do quite a lot. It's not to protect the children because everyone knows it. When your children are taken, everyone knows, and the people talk and pass it around. Everyone was out on the street looking at the guards and social workers taking the children. You just know that everybody was talking about it afterwards. The shame is so unreal. The in-camera rule is not to protect the children's identity. The whole neighbourhood knows and they're all talking about it. One person tells another and they tell someone else, and before you know it, the whole of Ireland knows that your children are in care. So I think it is very biased to say the in-camera rule is there to protect the children's identity when that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. It's there to protect the public servants, social workers, solicitors, the gals, the judge. That's my belief.
Look into your mother's face. No one else can take her place. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Sophie's troubles began when she reported to the Gardaí that her teenage daughter was sexually abused by her father when she was alone in the house with him. The matter ended up in the family court, and a court expert appointed by the judge accused Sophie of parental alienation and recommended that custody of the children be handed over to their father. Sophie has not seen her children since early 2022.
I despise all of them. In particular, I suppose if I had to pick an organisation who I think are the worst, whilst I think the family law courts are despicable, it's the people in them. They are liars. They have no honesty. The in-camera rule needs to be lifted. Then I think you would get some justice. The in-camera rule means there's no justice because your basic human right is being violated, but it's hidden by the in-camera rule. Mothers' basic rights are denied in Ireland because of the in-camera rule. because people in court, solicitors, experts, even judges can deny you your constitutional rights. And it's hidden away by the in-camera rule because nobody knows it's happening. People commit perjury every single day in family law courts, and nobody outside the court knows that this is happening. The in-camera rule just keeps it hidden from the public. I've witnessed social workers commit perjury. I have proof of that, and I even have an admission of perjury by a social worker. Court experts who aren't court experts at all, they commit perjury all the time. Nothing is done about it. And the judges deny you your constitutional right, and it's hidden away. And if you say anything, you're threatened with jail for breaking the in-camera rule. The father of my children has tried to have me sent to prison for breaching the in-camera rule, and it obviously wasn't successful, but he tried. When it was proved that I hadn't breached the in-camera rule, I didn't even get an apology. I believe the in-camera rule is there to silence women and to gag mothers, and also to cover up for the abuse that the mothers are suffering in Ireland. Solicitors, barristers, court experts, social workers, and even judges are all able to hide their wrongdoing behind the in-camera rule. They break the law, they break legal procedure, and they get away with it because they think that the in-camera rule protects their dishonesty. And even when it's highlighted to a judge by another solicitor that someone on the opposing side has done something dishonest, which is a violation of their legal oath, even when that's highlighted, I've had a judge laugh it off and say his good friend wouldn't do that. So the in-camera rule is a tool to silence victims. And I think the one thing that needs to happen in our society is to lift the in-camera rule and to just remove it. It was there to protect people's privacy, but it's now a weapon of the family court, and it's being used most definitely as a weapon to silence me and to silence what they're doing to me. And I know I'm not alone. I know other mothers in the family law courts in exactly the same boat as me. The in-camera rule is a weapon used by abusive men to control you, to abuse and to steal from you. It has to go. A barrister told me once that the judge wouldn't like me because of how I looked. And I asked, how does it matter? Why does it matter how I looked? How did that affect me being a good person or a bad person or a good mother or a bad mother? And I was told the judge wouldn't like me because I had myself together and I looked like I was able to cope with my life. So you're judged on your actual appearance. The second you walk into that court, a judge will decide if you're a good person, if you're a bad person, if you can have your constitutional right or not. I went into court one time and I explained that I was changing my legal team and that I needed an adjournment so that my file could be handed over. I repeated it over and over again that I would like an adjournment and that I was asking for my constitutional rights to legal representation. And the judge told me he didn't care and I could go to hell for my constitutional rights. That's what the in-camera rule does. It allows judges to operate outside the constitution of this country. This is unconstitutional, removing children from their mother for no reason. My children are now living in appalling living conditions. They are subject to imprisonment by their school and by the father. They are gagged into silence. As their mother, I have no avenue to go to. You can't say anything because if you say anything, you will be threatened.
Ireland, Mother Ireland, let not the sins of the father be visited on these children. Justice for birth mothers, oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Tammy was a victim of domestic violence. Tusla used this as the excuse to remove her children from her and refused to return the children to her after her partner was jailed. Sometime later, she became pregnant again by a different partner, and this ended up in the family court. Tusla accused her of being an inadequate mother, having failed to protect her children from domestic violence, and recommended that custody of the baby be given to the father. They then closed the case, and the father of her baby has refused in the last couple of years to allow her to see her son.
The in-camera rule should be removed. It needs to be taken out of the courtroom so people can actually go in and see how mothers and their children are treated like dirt. I've had situations where the judge said things to me and you're thinking, whoa, where did that come from? Out of, you're supposed to be independent. You're not supposed to speak to me like that. The people of Ireland need to realise what's happening to the children of Ireland today. What happened in the mother and baby homes in the past is only coming to light now. In those days, when your baby was taken, you were sent home. Nowadays, when your children are taken, it's never ending. It's torture from social workers, morning, noon and night. Like the social workers are constantly reminding you, we have your children and there's nothing you can do about it. In court, they laugh and joke among themselves before and after the hearing. It's disgusting. They come in 2s and 3s to court. You're always outnumbered. Like you'll have the social worker, you'll have the team leader, and sometimes the duty social worker will go to the court as well. So like you have the 3 of them sitting there across from me. When there's a break, they all go into one room. They're social workers and they're solicitors and barristers and the gals, and you can hear them laughing and joking while you're standing outside the Cower Tower. This always makes me sick to my stomach, because at the end of the day, this is about my children. You are standing outside sick to death with worry, and they're all inside laughing and joking together.
One sound you don't want to hear is the cry of the mother and her child taken from her. Justice for birth mothers, oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Clara's troubles began when she arrived in Ireland from the UK, having testified against a dangerous criminal in her neighbourhood, and she came here for her safety and the safety of her children. Shortly after she arrived in Ireland, the Gardai arrived at her isolated rural homestead looking for passports, and this was her first encounter with the Gardai. In the years that followed, the Gardai arrested her on 3 separate occasions and removed her children. On the first occasion, the judge ordered that the children be returned home to her immediately. The Gardai have admitted that they arrested her in error on one of these occasions.
I believe that taking children unlawfully is a criminal matter, and there is no in-camera rule for criminal cases, so there should be no in-camera rule for the unlawful taking of children. And the guards arrested me for motoring offences and took my children. Later on, they admitted that I was arrested in error. My children were taken unlawfully. That is a crime. There should be no in-camera rule when children are taken unlawfully. The in-camera rule is for family matters. Taking children unlawfully is not a family matter. It is a criminal matter, and there should be no in-camera rule for that.
My children have been taken by the force of law and order in Ireland, Holy Ireland. Justice for birth mothers, oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Danielle was a victim of coercive control and domestic violence. Her husband attempted to have her committed to a mental hospital, having convinced some professionals and some members of her family that she was mentally ill.
You know, I can understand to a certain extent why there is an in-camera, but I feel like it's been abused, and it's been used for the wrong reasons. You know, it's supposed to be about protecting the family, but I actually feel it's doing the reverse. And the reason for that is because there's no justice in the family law courts. So how does the in-camera rule protect us all? It doesn't. It's to protect all of the players, all of the professionals. It's that simple, in my view and in my experience. Why are we not allowed to speak? Why are we not allowed to have support? It's used to crush us as well, I feel. You can't say anything. It's terribly unjust. Why are we shut up? If the truth was allowed to be told, and there was no in-camera rule, you could hold your head high, but we're not allowed to tell our story. They protect the abuser and not the abused, and that's the result of the in-camera rule. We feel shame because the truth can't get out.
Look into your mother's face. No one else can take her place. Justice for birth mothers, oh Lord, hear my prayer.
Earlier this year, the Child Law Project, known as CLP, celebrated 10 years of reporting on and analysing child protection proceedings in the family courts. The CLP was established in November 2012 by a statutory instrument to report on cases in the family court that are held in camera. Since 2018, the project has been fully funded by the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, and it's a standalone, independent entity. Since publishing its first volume of court reports in the spring of 2013, the project has published 859 reports on childcare proceedings heard in the District Court and High Court, along with a series of observations. The anonymity of the children and parents involved is protected in the reports. I'm aware that one swallow never makes a summer, but nevertheless, I would like to share my own personal experience of the Child Law Project. Some years ago, a judge in the family court allowed me to act as a Mackenzie friend to a mother who was the subject of a 2-day hearing in relation to an application by Tusla for a full care order. Some months later, this court hearing was the subject of a Child Law Project report. Everything in the report was said in court. But the problem was not with what was in the report, but with what was left out of it. The report failed to mention the fact that the mother had only been notified 2 days prior to the hearing that it was going ahead. At the outset, she asked the judge for an adjournment so that she could be legally represented. The judge refused the mother's request and in so doing denied her her constitutional right to be legally represented in court. This fact was not published in the Child Law Project report. Moving on then, the social workers falsely claimed in the evidence that they presented to the court that the mother had alcohol and drug addiction issues. They presented no evidence to support their claims. An outsider reading this report is led to believe that the mother is a drug addict with issues around alcohol, and this is false. The issue around false allegations made by social workers has been the subject of an earlier podcast, and it includes an audio recording of Deputy Peadar Tobin, the Aontú leader, telling the Dáil about false allegations made against a mother by Tusla in relation to alcoholism. When the Child Law Project report was published, the mother rang me in great distress because she had been the subject of what she believed to be a character assassination, and she felt powerless to right that wrong. The Child Law Project report also failed to report on the fact that the judge probed social workers about the abuse the child was subjected to in the foster home. This was not included in the CLP report. And what is really worrying is that the original CLP report was amended twice after it was published. In theory, the CLP can only report on what happens and on what is said in court. It states on the CLP website, and I quote, "We cannot report on aspects of a case where we have not attended the hearing where it has been discussed, or report on a case based on information received outside the court context." The original CLP report on the case that I attended portrayed the father of the child in a glowing light. After the court hearing, Tusla attempted to move the child outside of the jurisdiction to the care of her father. He failed an international social work check due to domestic violence he inflicted on women outside the jurisdiction. The Child Law Project report was amended to include this fact that had not been discussed during the court hearing. This is a voiceover of what the mother told me recently.
My experience with the Child Law Project has not been a favourable one. After the court hearing, as Tulsa's narrative changed, so did the narrative of the Child Law Project report published on their website. How can these amendments be explained? In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, mind, I believe that the Child Law Project communicate with Tulsa outside the court. That is my suspicion. I have no evidence to give to you. All I can do is ask questions. Why was my report amended twice after it was published? How did the Child Law Project find out about the report father that came after the court hearing? There's no way of me being able to find out the answers to my questions because they don't communicate directly with mothers.
The Family Law Act 1995, Section 47, provides for the procuring of a report in writing on any question affecting the welfare of a party to the proceedings or any other person to whom they relate. Part 3 of the Family Law Act 1995, Section 47, states that a copy of a report under subsection 1 shall be given to the parties to the proceedings concerned, and if he or she is not a party to the proceedings, to the person to whom it relates and may be received in evidence in the proceedings. It has come to the attention of the Alliance for Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice that this act is being breached because the in-camera rule is being used to block mothers from having the Section 47 reports, which they are entitled to under the Act. Bear in mind that the legislation refers to only Section 47 reports and does not apply to any other court reports. I now want to draw your attention to a groundbreaking declaration made in July 2019. Justice Noonan made a High Court declaration that the in-camera rule can be lifted for the purposes of a Garda investigation into perjury committed in an in-camera family law proceeding. The Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice is not aware if there has been a case taken to prosecute perjury since this declaration was made by Justice Noonan. The Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice advises mothers never to make personal disclosures on social media or any public forum. In doing so, not only are they identifying themselves, they are identifying their children and other family members. This creates a digital footprint which their children will have to live with for the rest of their lives, and that it may well have an adverse effect on their children's future welfare, for example, when they apply for a job. The Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice encourage mothers to advocate collectively on the issues that affect them and their children in a way that protects their anonymity.
Justice for Birth Mothers is a co-production between the Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice and Compass Media. The podcast series received no funding and is made possible by a team of volunteers. Pseudonames have been used to protect the identities of the birth mothers. We're grateful to these mothers who shared their stories to highlight the ongoing state abuse of mothers by Tusla, some Gardai and the family court system. Thanks also to the ladies who read the transcripts, which were very difficult for them given the harrowing stories. Thank you for listening, and please share this podcast with your family, friends and contacts. The next podcast examines Tell Us, the name given to Tusla's complaint system. Until next time, Bannocht de Arif Golair.
In the land where I was born, there are now women seeking justice. Justice for birth mothers. Oh Lord, hear my prayer.